From the shadows of the dark web, a dangerous kingpin emerges.
Somebody was running an entire drug empire on the web and not getting caught, which was just insane.
There was every drug imaginable. The site was worldwide.
No one knew anything about this person running the site.
Who is the mastermind?
He was willing to do anything to protect this operation.
And just how dangerous is he?
He had the ability to send hitmen.
We were basically stuck there, feeling like sitting ducks.
And I was just begging him to stop.
It's kind of an exercise in anarchy.
I have no doubt that his website was the cause of my son's death.
He literally created a world, and he was God in that world.
In-depth, insightful, in a class of its own. It's America's leading journal, Vanity Fair. Special correspondent Nick Bilton unravels a Silicon Valley murder mystery. The city of Perth, situated on Australia's western coast, is home to a close-knit community that includes 16-year-old Preston Bridge.
Preston Bridge was this really sweet kid, your typical 16-year-old. Played soccer with his mates and went to the beach and surfed and hung out with his friends and went to school.
Preston was born, and that was just the best day of my life. He never had an enemy in the world. He was just an amazing kid.
The Preston Bridge everyone knew was smart and responsible. But today, even in remote Australia, the evils of a distant world are only a keystroke away. On February 15th, Preston Bridge is preparing for the yearly school dance.
It was the 16-year-old ball, which is a big thing there, just like the prom in the United States. And his parents had given him permission to go to a party afterwards.
I took them to the after party. When he got out of the car, I said to him, just behave yourself, don't do anything stupid. And his last words to me was, what do you think, I'm an idiot?
Preston texts his father to let him know that he'll be spending the night with his friends at the Sun Moon Resort. The next morning, his sister Amy and father plan to take him out for breakfast.
Amy and I rang him all morning and couldn't get hold of him. We were driving down the beachfront. As we went past the Sun and Moon, there was an ambulance, 3 police cars. I looked up the driveway and I saw something under a white sheet. I saw his best mate standing there, and a police officer approached me. Yeah, he said it was Preston, and told me he had a catastrophic head injury.
According to witnesses, Preston Bridge jumped head first from a second-floor balcony of the beachfront hotel.
We got to the hospital. Well, the doctor, basically said to us, look, he's in a critical situation. And then we saw Preston maybe 10 minutes later in the ICU, in the intensive care.
We were just all hoping for a miracle. And we were hoping that, you know, he's just going to wake up.
16-year-old Preston Bridge is unresponsive. He is put on life support.
All we had to do was wait. So we'd made a phone call to a couple of our closest friends. I was asking one of the kids what happened. And the kid said that this boy turned up at the after party with recreational party drugs.
This kid bought a 10-pack of the N-bomb, which was a synthetic drug that's made in China that you would never have been able to get in Perth, Australia, prior to this They're pretty terrifying.
They put blotting paper in a liquid solution and they cut it into squares, and that you put it under your tongue. These are mind-altering psychoactive chemicals manufactured to mimic the effect of acid. Its potency can be 60 times more powerful than LSD.
The kids took it, and Preston started to have a really bad trip, freaked out. It was way too intense for him.
Preston was acting really, really strange. He started crying. He started talking a foreign language. And a minute later, Preston ran from the end of the balcony and then jumped through the air and hit himself across the back of the head. And what he did was he lacerated his brainstem.
Preston's family spends the next 48 hours at his bedside.
And then Monday, 3:48, we got a call from the doctor. Yeah, he told us Preston had passed away. Yep, that was the news you didn't want. So, yeah. I have no doubt in my mind whatsoever that his death was for a reason. But going through every day, pretty hard. It's pretty hard.
While the family struggles to process Preston's death, investigators want to know how these illegal drugs got into the country and into the hands of teenagers. They track down the young man who provided the drugs and place him under arrest.
The investigators told me, and he admitted that he'd bought it on the Silk Road website. I said, you can't sell drugs on a website. What are you talking about? I just could not believe that could happen.
The Silk Road Global Marketplace opens for business on January 27th, 2011.
It's an online drug bazaar where anonymous users could buy all sorts of illegal drugs and even hire a hitman.
It started off quite small, but as more and more people found out about it, it sort of snowballed, and there were 15,000 or so different listings on a single day, ranging from marijuana to opioids, fake IDs, fake passports, pirated software.
In the United States, federal task forces form in New York, Baltimore, and Chicago, made up of agents from the Department of Homeland Security, the DEA, and FBI. Their first job, pinpoint the site's base of operations.
The Silk Road was one of the first high-profile sites to run on this obscure portion of the internet called the dark web, which is really just a sexy name for this really wonderfully crafted piece of software.
From a user's perspective, really all you had to do was download a special browser, the Tor browser. But beyond that, it just looks like you're surfing on the ordinary internet. It was like the perfect marriage of digital commerce and black market activity. Nobody used their real name on Silk Road. Location was completely concealed. Identity was concealed.
So in essence, Silk Road operated as a middleman. The seller would have to ship the drugs to the buyers, and Silk Road made its money on commission.
The Silk Road made it possible for anyone to buy drugs. Kids in the middle of nowhere were able to go onto this website as if it was Amazon, and they bought some bad stuff.
It's not just Preston's death now. This has become bigger than that. This has become a global issue. If Silk Road did not exist, Preston and many, many, many other teenagers would still be alive.
By early 2013, as deaths from drug overdoses multiply at home and abroad, agents on the case step up their game. They focus their attention on the mysterious person running Silk Road.
This single administrator emerged, calling himself the Dread Pirate Roberts, and it was a carefully chosen title that was taken from a film called The Princess Bride. He was kind of a hero, but nobody knew anything about the Dread Pirate Roberts.
He would communicate regularly with the site's user base, and he would sort of set the rules of the site.
It was clear from the beginning that he did have a staff of some kinds, maintaining the site, fixing bugs. But the Dread Pirate Roberts was the captain of the ship. He insisted that if you were going to work for him, you had to actually photograph your ID and send him a digital copy.
He would always have a way of knowing who they are and where they live. That information flow did not go the other way. He never revealed his own identity in his conversations with his employees.
They know him only as the Dread Pirate Roberts, or DPR. They all work in remote locations around the world. One of his most visible employees, screen name Chronic Pain, acts as a moderator on the site and is known for his advice on pain management.
Chronic Pain, also known as Curtis Clark Green, was a representation of just how diverse the people involved in the Silk Road were.
Curtis and I, we've been married for almost 29 years. We have 2 daughters and 4 grandsons, and our 2 little chihuahuas.
He was a Mormon grandfather in Utah, living this extremely normal suburban life with an alter ego as one of the moderators of this Silk Road.
He used the identity Chronic Pain. Since he injured his back, he has to be on pain medication for the rest of his life.
He thought that he was just doing web moderation. He was never touching drugs. But he was, as much as any employee of the Silk Road, a key part of making the site work.
We weren't selling, we weren't buying, but DPR came to Curtis and asked him to facilitate a deal with another user that would make a lot of money and keep some of these vendors happy.
Chronic Pain was just supposed to be the intermediary. In other words, receive it for one party and ship it out for another party.
He didn't want anything to do with it. It really upset him that DPR would ask him to do this. But it was basically that if you don't do this, then you don't have a job.
It's a windy, cold day in Spanish Fork, Utah, and right before 9 a.m., and there's a van parked in front of Curtis's house. A man gets out of the van dressed as a mailman, and he throws his package on the front lawn and knocks on the door. No one answers.
Curtis is home by himself with our 2 chihuahuas, and it was an oversized package, quite big for what he was expecting, so he left it out there for a good hour and a half. But curiosity got to him.
The door opens. Curtis Green grabs the package and goes back in his house. About 20 seconds later, the van opens and these undercover agents come trampling out, take a battering ram to the front door of Curtis's house. And Curtis Green is opening the package and a plume of coke bursts into his face.
The package contains a kilo of cocaine and was a controlled delivery set up by Baltimore DEA agent Carl Mark Force. Agent Force has been undercover for 10 months, acting as one of the major vendors on the Silk Road site.
When Curtis Green gets arrested, they get his password for the Silk Road, and they see that DPR had given Curtis Green unlimited access to the site.
Green immediately agrees to cooperate with investigators. He is released within 24 hours of his arrest.
He was terrified. We both were. We were basically stuck there feeling like sitting ducks.
The agents plan to use Green and his Silk Road accounts to infiltrate the site.
Chronic Pain demonstrated for all of the law enforcement folks how he could go in and, among other things, how he could reset people's passwords.
Just 6 days after Curtis Green makes a deal with the feds, the Dread Pirate Roberts realizes that he has a problem.
He was on the inside for a while. Now that he's been arrested, I'm afraid he'll give up info.
The Silk Road CEO turns to a longtime consigliere, a drug trafficker who goes by the name Knob.
Knob was this larger-than-life figure who had the ability to send hitmen after anyone that the Dread Pirate Roberts needed to take care of.
He was willing to do anything to protect this operation.
I would have no problem wasting this guy.
Dread Pirate Roberts, the founder of the illegal drug marketplace known as Silk Road, is worried. An employee named Curtis Green has just been arrested in Utah. Green knows nothing about the real identity of his employer, who demands transparency from his staff.
He's got our address, and he could find us very easily. Well, in Utah, when you're arrested, your photo is automatically put up on a website.
Dread Pirate Roberts was able to Google and see Curtis Green's mugshot. So immediately, he knows he's most likely cooperating with law enforcement.
The Silk Road CEO is determined to silence him. On January 27, 2013, he orders Knob, one of his chief lieutenants, to murder Curtis Green.
Never killed a man or had one killed before, but it's the right move in this case.
Dread Pirate Roberts requests that it be done. He offers money for Chronic Pain's death.
When he makes the decision to put out the hit on Curtis, he's thinking like a businessman. In his mind, that's par for the course of running a business, and he pays $40,000 up front, $40,000 when the person is dead. He gets a note from Knob and it says, "Green is dead and disposed of. He died of asphyxiation. I will get you a picture for proof of death."
4 days later, Knob sends Roberts a photo of Curtis Green, pale and lifeless, lying on the floor.
He gets the photos of Curtis. There's a moment in the chats where he goes silent for a good minute or two. He just doesn't respond, and Knob says, "Are you okay?"
I'm pissed that I had to kill him, but what's done is done.
When Green disappears, the agents file a missing persons report, and authorities quickly discover that his passwords no longer work. Now they have to find another path into the Silk Road operation. The joint law enforcement effort to track down the Dread Pirate Roberts intensifies. IRS agent Gary Alford takes the mission personally.
I saw the human cost of people addicted to drugs and how it would destroy families, it could destroy communities, and I know ultimately people will die from these drugs.
Gary knew that just to get the Silk Road site off the ground, whoever was running it would have to advertise it on the ordinary internet.
To access the Silk Road site, users are instructed to download a special browser to navigate the dark web. The software is found using a simple Google search.
They kept on moving the searches back and back and back until he got to the very first mentions he could find of Silk Road.
I saw a post on the Bitcoin forum by an avatar named Altoid. This person, Altoid, said, "Hey, have you checked out this website, Silk Road?" So immediately, bells are going off in my head. Who is this Altoid? Looking into Altoid and going through all his posts, I saw he left an email address, rossulbricht@gmail.com. It was a very unique name, so it was very easy to figure out who Ross Ulbricht was.
Everyone who knew Ross Ulbricht saw him as this kind of like upstanding, honest, forthright, a little bit kind of a hippie young guy. He seems like this all-American Eagle Scout kid.
"29-year-old Ross Ulbricht, a native of Austin, Texas, earned a graduate degree from Penn State in material science and engineering.
Ross was obsessed with two things at Penn State, and they were not his major. One was djembe drumming. He was part of this drum circle. And then he became obsessed with Julia. Ross and Julia met in college. They fell in love quite quickly. And for a long time, the relationship was great.
I really loved how thoughtful he was. He had this vision for his life of what he wanted it to be.
What are you most excited about for the 2011 year?
Just very excited to see how things play out. I think it's going to be a big year of change. On a broad scale.
He just really wanted to make a difference, and he thought, why wait to make a difference?
Yeah, it's exciting.
She was very supportive of him. She followed him from Penn State when he left school to back to Austin.
After college, Ross explores different career paths with Julia at his side.
For Ross, he always set a goal for himself by the time he was 30 that he was going to be a billionaire. But for him, it was never about things. He used to pride himself on the fact that he never spent money on anything.
He tries his hand at everything from tutoring to selling used books. But the pressures of postgraduate life strain the relationship.
We would fight a lot, and that was really where we weren't working. We would just argue and just start yelling at each other really for nothing. I didn't feel like I was really connecting with him anymore, and that's kind of why we broke up.
After the breakup, Ross decides to leave Austin.
So a friend of his invites him out to San Francisco. And it actually turns out that it was a really great choice. And he kind of falls in love with San Francisco quite quickly.
Well, as the investigation progressed, I saw a video of him being interviewed with his friend.
Crazy thing about San Francisco is it feels like home already, you know?
Ross Ulbricht, an ex-Eagle Scout. He certainly didn't look like an ordinary drug dealer.
When people asked him what he did, and it seems like one thing he told them was that he was just watching the market. He was trading in a fully digital currency using Bitcoin.
I want to have had a substantial positive impact on the future of humanity.
It was clear that Ross was a really bright kid, but he had no computer science degrees.
He hated computers, really. He definitely knew how to code a little bit, but nothing on the level that was required to do this kind of thing.
I ran him through all the databases, and nothing came up to indicate he was running this illegal trafficking business.
Ross Ulbricht is not considered a person of interest. The task force pursues a growing list of potential suspects.
They had 50 names on a list. People from San Francisco, from Mexico, from you name it.
The agents appear no closer to unmasking the Dread Pirate Roberts, and he grows bolder by the day.
He literally created a world, and he was God in that world. It is so similar to the transformation that I've seen happen with traditional CEOs of Silicon Valley. Uber, Facebook, Twitter, you name it. They start with this idea, and next thing they know, it's changing the world, and their egos change too.
And like any successful Silicon Valley entrepreneur, this website founder has bragging rights. Silk Road is changing the world by flooding it with illegal and often deadly drugs. Over the past 2 years, federal task forces have been pursuing the internet's most powerful drug kingpin, the Dread Pirate Roberts. Despite their growing list of potential suspects, they have no solid leads. An airplane carrying mail from Canada lands at San Francisco International Airport. As the mail is processed by Customs and Border Patrol, the agents flag one package for further examination.
They had opened the package and there were what appeared to be fake driver's license going to a location in San Francisco.
There were 9 different IDs, all the same individual in different guises. It's not just somebody trying to get a fake ID so they can walk into a bar. It's somebody getting high-quality IDs with different pictures, different states.
All are being shipped to a residential address on 15th Street near the Castro district.
The agent who was given these fake IDs walks up to the front door, and as he's about to knock, Ross Ulbricht standing there in just a pair of shorts, and they both stare at each other. And there's this frozen moment.
The picture that was on all these licenses was of Mr. Ulbricht.
Those IDs were just sort of intercepted in a routine custom scan. The agent who was following up had no idea about the Silk Road investigation.
The agent holds up the fake IDs, and Ross is panic-stricken, white as a ghost, hands are shaking. The agent's like, I'm not here to arrest you. I just want to know about these fake IDs.
He says, I just bought these on the Silk Road. Maybe you've heard of it.
Ross Ulbricht answered their questions. The agents got what they wanted.
Before leaving, the agents do one last thing. They take Ulbricht's real ID and run it through their database. It comes up clean, once again. Back on the East Coast, federal law enforcement's 2-year hunt for the mysterious kingpin of Silk Road turns up a significant lead in September 2013.
They had the location of the Silk Road server, which was, at that point, the holy grail of investigation.
So the FBI found that the Silk Road was hosted near Reykjavik in Iceland. And so they asked for the help from the Icelandic police, who made a copy of it, and they took it back to the United States.
That gave us a completely new window, sort of behind-the-scenes look. When you run a website, it's common for logs to be automatically kept on the server. The last entry of the log was still there, and it indicated the last login by the Dread Pirate Roberts.
And that pointed to an IP address of an internet cafe in San Francisco that they knew the Dread Pirate Roberts had accessed the site from.
He was running this billion-dollar drug trade from a coffee shop, thinking he was invisible, that he would never be found. No one can hide from the FBI.
But the dark web's most successful and most elusive drug kingpin is no easy prey. The FBI may have found his trail in cyberspace, but now they have to figure out how to catch him in the real world. After a 2-year investigation, the FBI has pinpointed the location where the internet's most notorious drug kingpin is conducting business. It's an internet cafe on Laguna Street in San Francisco. Meanwhile, back in New York, IRS agent Gary Alford visits the FBI Cyber Crimes Unit, and he's struck by something he sees.
I walk into this quiet area, and they have this big board where they can write information about the case. And I did notice on their board that they had gotten something in San Francisco. So I said, hey, I have a guy I'm looking at in San Francisco.
Alfred tells the FBI agents about his very first suspect, Ross Ulbricht. Investigators run Ulbricht's name through the law enforcement database. This time, there's a hit. A report about fake IDs.
The woman says, there's a tag on this guy. And she starts reading this quote from Ross, which is, technically you could get these on the Silk Road website, where you could buy guns and drugs too. And Gary says, this is the guy.
Alfred tracks Ulbricht to an apartment on Hickory Street, the first place he lived when he moved to San Francisco.
I put it together with the information we had from FBI, went into Google Maps and typed Ulbricht's address and the internet cafe in San Francisco.
The coffee shop is only a block and a half from this guy's house.
Could Ross Ulbricht, a 29-year-old Eagle Scout, really be the mastermind of one of the world's largest black market websites? A man willing to have a rogue employee murdered. To prove it, federal agents need to catch the Dread Pirate Roberts in the act. And they must seize Ross Ulbricht's laptop while he is doing Silk Road business.
As law enforcement closes in on him, they want to prove without a doubt that these two people are the same, that Ross Ulbricht is the ultimate administrator of the Silk Road, that he is the Dread Pirate Roberts.
We spent the next 3 weeks learning everything we could about Ross Ulbricht. They tracked him to a different house, that outer areas of San Francisco. Had agents surveilling him physically and surveilling DPR online.
The Dread Pirate Roberts, he spent the majority of his day on a computer, 18 hours a day on the Silk Road, chatting with all of his employees. He would then go online as Ross Ulbricht and share posts on Facebook and Twitter. When the Dread Pirate Roberts said, I'm going away for the weekend to go camping, there was pictures of Ross Ulbricht camping. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of instances of this.
He was hiding in plain sight.
Nine months after investigators first identify Ross Ulbricht as a potential suspect, agents are ready to close in.
It's a very coordinated, multi-agency sting operation where the FBI is watching him as he leaves his house.
They're on the street in San Francisco in Glen Park, not far from where I lived. Ross goes inside the coffee shop. There was nowhere to sit. And then they see him come out. And then Ross walks into the library.
The surveillance team slips into the library, right behind Ross Ulbricht.
He sits down in the science fiction section, facing the window instead of the door. He has his laptop open.
He was logged into the mastermind page, so it is the inner workings of Silk Road.
We knew that there was a very good chance that he had configured his laptop so that if he closed it, it would be fully encrypted.
All he would have had to do is slap the lid of his laptop shut, and all of those secrets would have remained impenetrable.
While he's sitting there working, a woman sat down across from him. Ross hears a commotion. A man and woman who are yelling at each other, and the man lifts up his fist to punch her. Ross turns around to see this, and that woman across from him grabbed the laptop very slowly and pulled it across the table. And as Ross turned around to lunge for the laptop, two agents grabbed him, handcuffed him. And that was it.
All three bystanders at the scene, including the couple who staged the fight to distract Ulbricht, are undercover FBI agents.
Ross says, "What am I being arrested for?" And the FBI holds up the arrest warrant, and it says, "The people of the United States versus Ross Ulbricht, AKA the Dread Pirate Roberts, AKA DPR, AKA Silk Road." And Ross says, I want a lawyer.
The FBI today shut down what it's calling the most sophisticated internet site in the business of selling hard drugs, including heroin, cocaine, and LSD.
The Silk Road kingpin, Ross Ulbricht, sits handcuffed in FBI custody as agents examine the treasure trove of evidence they've recovered. His laptop.
I've covered technology for so many years, and the amount of stuff that the Dread Pirate Roberts left as a digital fingerprint was astounding.
He kept a journal about how he'd started the site that spelled a lot of stuff out.
It was amazing to see that he was basically just a kid trying to keep up with this highly illegal and dangerous thing that he created.
Prosecutors also accuse him of offering money to have a user of the site killed who was threatening to expose it.
Once DPR was caught, I was shocked. I expected somebody evil looking. I thought, this does not look like the person that ordered a hit on my husband.
One of Ulbricht's lieutenants, who goes by the screen name Knob, coordinated the execution of Curtis Green and provided photographic evidence. But the most surprising detail of Green's murder? It never happened.
Knob was actually Karl Mark Force, an undercover agent lying to the Dread Pirate Roberts.
The photos Karl Mark Force provided to Ross Ulbricht were real. The crime was not. In exchange for a reduced sentence, Curtis Green faked his own death.
They filed a missing person report because they had to make it look real, like his body wasn't found. And I had to act like I was in mourning. Curtis wasn't able to leave the home for almost a year.
Finally able to come out of the shadows, Curtis Green now watches as Ross Ulbricht battles for his empire and his life.
Ross is charged with drug trafficking, conspiracy, money laundering, and this massive charge called the Kingpin Statute, basically used for like mafia dons and the heads of drug cartels. I think the world, including his closest friends and family, were shocked.
It felt like a nightmare. I had to visit him in jail, and he started crying and saying, there have been so many points where I could have walked away, and I didn't. My pride was the reason why I'm here.
On January 13th, 2015, more than a year after his arrest, the trial of Ross William Ulbricht begins.
The government is seizing more than $183 million they say was generated by Silk Road.
The mountain of evidence that we had left no doubt that he really was living a double life.
It was just a slam dunk for them. The jury came back in 3 hours and sentenced him guilty on all charges.
It's been more than 2 years since 16-year-old Preston Bridge took the synthetic drugs bought on Silk Road.
I have no doubt that his website that he created was the cause of my son's death. The loss of a child is something that you never get over. You just think, what could he have been? Where would he be now? What would he be doing now?
Preston Bridge's mother, Vicky, travels from Perth, Australia, to New York City to testify at the sentencing hearing.
I remember her saying to me, I watched him the whole time, and then all of a sudden, he started crying. I saw tears. She said that's when I knew that Preston had got to him.
I looked at Ross Ulbricht in the eyes, and for me as a mother, I felt satisfied in a way because I'd reached him.
For me, that was where it became real. But the question that I always wonder is, does Ross regret what he did or regret that he got caught?
The judge imposed a life sentence, and one of the main drivers was just the scope of the wide-scale drug trafficking.
The judge in the case said you wanted this to be your legacy, and it is. For better or for worse, he has made that mark.
These technologies allow us to connect people in ways that we have never been able to do so before. And when they do, they change the landscape forever.
It's becoming a national health emergency. It's hitting everywhere, and the drugs don't care who you are or what class you come from. It can destroy you.
Heroin and fentanyl and N-bomb and other synthetic drugs, they're not drugs. They are poisons, and there isn't a world in my mind where it should be okay for a 16-year-old to buy that stuff on the internet.
Three in 5 kids experiment with drugs, and some experiments go wrong. But whatever we do, it's not just for Preston's sake, it's for the whole world. So, hopefully we can make sure that whatever's transpired here does not happen again.